So this is accessibility for internet site managers. That's not necessarily the correct title, but the idea is that we are going to be covering extremely high level of what is digital accessibility. If you haven't learned anything about accessibility, you might need to go back and do a deeper dive on what that means. We have a recording I can get you. I can send you some resources. Let me know if you need something, basically, and I will send out a follow-up from this training as well. So, slide 2, our agenda. So we're going to talk about digital accessibility. We're going to talk about content management and accessibility, which mostly means our files and our documents that we're posting or sharing around the agency or whatever the situation is. And then very briefly at the end, it doesn't take a ton of time, we're going to talk about creating the steps to create accessible pages in Drupal, our public-facing internet sites. So the bulk of it's going to be on PDF. If you are only a PDF user and you don't manage the internet, you can drop off after that's done or stay. That is up to you. So welcome, and I think we'll get started. Briefly about digital accessibility, mostly what you're thinking about is it perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust? Those are the web content accessibility guidelines. I don't know, I'm quoting that. That's what they're called. Primary fundamentals, but that looks like, can someone hear it or see it or consume it in a different way depending on their abilities? So does visual information have captions or descriptions or alt text or alt text? Are headers and styles used? Programs have built in some accessibility features, and if you use the program appropriately, it naturally makes it more accessible. Are labels and alternate text There are labels and alternate text for screen readers. That's kind of like the first one. Descriptions. Are there audio descriptions and visual descriptions depending on how the information is communicated? Descriptive links, which is not writing click here or this form. Basically, does the text for the link stand alone if you're not looking at it next to any other text? So it should say accessibility for internet content manager slides or something that is logical for whatever the link is. Plain and inclusive language. And so that's the general idea of digital accessibility at like 10,000 feet. It's so very, very high. So most of us start with Word for our documents, and if you do it appropriately, it can be more easily accessible. And that, again, this is going to be a little bit of a reiteration from last slide, but involves using the headings and styles embedded in Word, alternate text for images, table structure. We need to make sure the headers are identified and all that kind of stuff. And there's a table description. Again, descriptive links, lists and columns should be the system as that style so it knows and understands. A legible text size, the default standard that is preferred is Arial 12. You can look at the Chief Marketing Office's information or the accessibility minimum requirements site for that information. And then, is there good color contrast? This is one. PowerPoint has recently added tools for it, and there are external tools like the WebAIM contrast tracker, which I will link for you, but is a visual check. If the person is colorblind or just needs very stark contrast, will the person be able to read it? And so again, the next bullet is no color reliance. So the red, green, yellow that we use all the time for data is not helpful for people who are colorblind. They won't be able to tell which section is which. So it should just be communicated another way as well. Like maybe it's red and a pattern or icon or something like that. Thanks, Christy. And then the document title for Word, if you go to the file info, which I will start switching over to Word, you can add a title and then separately from like the file name, and that is the most user-friendly title usually and the one that we want to rely on. So I'm going to switch. So this is a document. I'm going to start with document. Just really quickly. This is not a training on how to use Word accessibility checker. I just want to start here really quick. So it always tells me whether or not it's accessible at the bottom, just based on the things that the Word accessibility checker checks. Sorry, it's a terrible sentence. But I see accessibility investigate. So I know that that means there's something it doesn't think is correct. So I'm going to click on that. And in general, if you go to review, you can go to check accessibility, and it's going to bring up this panel that tells you what's wrong. This is not a particularly hard document. I've already used my styles. The colors are fine. So it's just saying, hey, you don't have altered text for this. I'm going to verify the description because it made one and it was terrible. Screenshot of document library. And to be fair, it should just be document library. You don't have to write screenshot. Document library. Again, if you're using Word Accessibility Checker and you don't know how, there's some. When you have a Word document that is accessible, if you use that setup and then save it as a PDF, it will be the most accessible to begin with for PDF. That's why I'm starting here. So I have this Word document. We'll see how it goes because I didn't check anything else in advance. And I'm going to save it as a PDF. It is highly suggested that you do not do print as PDF. Or where is it? Yeah, when you do print and then select save as PDF, that's not going to bring over any of your accessibility settings, so it's going to involve a lot more work in PDF. Save as PDF is an option, but isn't the best option. It will bring over some, but not all. The best option, if you have Adobe Acrobat, you should have this, is the Acrobat bar, and you do create PDF. So it's going to save it for me, and it will have the most accessibility settings. It brings over, and this is one of my slides. When you use the when you create the document in Word, all of these items will get moved over with the document. And so if we use headings, we won't have to redo them in PDF, etc. So my PDF popped up over here. And now I have a PDF. We've used the thing. The next step is the accessibility wizard. We met with a whole bunch of different people to find the easiest way to get the PDF the most accessible, and that's starting with the accessibility wizard. Thank you, Christy. And that starts with finding the action wizard. So if you've never added it, you'll have to go to more tools at the bottom. Go down, it's almost at the very bottom, and there's action wizard, and it'll say add if you've not added it before. I'm just going to click open because I have added it before, and then it adds it to your list right here. So mine's at the bottom, but the point is you either click open or add, and it's going to bring up this list. And what you're going to do is click make accessible, and it's going to walk you through most of the steps. You click make accessible and click start. It says, are you sure? And you say yes or allow. The first step is the title. I didn't put the title in, so I'm going to uncheck leave as is, and I'm going to say intranet page library review. I don't need doc. And that's what I'm calling it. Once you have your title, and if you wanted to change any of the others, you could. You click OK, and it's going to say, is this a scan document? Hopefully not. Scan documents are terribly inaccessible. Unless you absolutely must, I do not recommend it. So I'm going to say no, skip this step. It's not scanned. Then are there form fields? Also no. If there are form fields, it's going to go through and detect them, and you can go through and edit them if needed be after the fact. Next is language. This one is English. Obviously, if you need to change it, there are other choices. Woo, they jump me everywhere. Then click OK. But this is saying, hey, are there images? Do we need alt text? And so it's going to look. I'm going to push OK. Sorry, I'm trying to be slow on purpose. And it says there are no figures with missing alternate text. Had I not gone in Word and added that alt text that we just added, it would pull up the figures. And I'll show you what it does when it does that in just 1 second. After the alt text, the last step is the accessibility checker is what it calls it. So start checking. And it's going to bring up this menu. If there were many issues, there would be many things here listed. This says 2 issues. and they're the ones that require manual check. So this was a very naturally accessible document. On the other hand, if you went to this one, it would probably have a whole mess of problems. Let's see. Accessibility. Check accessibility, because I've not done anything with it. I just assume. Well, not too many. So there's no tags and the headings are not working well. So we'd have to go through and check stuff. But we've done our accessibility check and we are here. I did want to show you, had we had any images that didn't have alternate text, this thing would have popped up instead of just saying okay. And it says how many images you have, and you can click through them with arrows, and it highlights it like in the background in blue, and you can write whatever you want the accessibility or the alternate text to be. This is what a reader is going to read. It's also what it's going to appear if the graphic stops working for some reason. So having anything there makes you know what graphic is missing, but also screen readers are going to be like, image or document library or whatever it is, and they'll have an idea of what context you're trying to show in the document. Once you've done it, it's save and close. If this were a decorative figure, like a line or an icon that doesn't really convey any important visual information, you can mark it decorative, and it's not going to have anything for the reader. It's just going to pretend it doesn't exist because it is decorative. So it's not decorative. I'm unclicked it and I'm going to hit save and close. Make sure you hit save and close, because if you just exit out of it, it doesn't save it and you have to rewrite all of your alt text. So I have checked everything that goes automatically in this document. There are 2 checks that are pretty much always going to be manual. Well, 3, I guess, because color contrast. Color contrast is one of those, and that's visually like you can also use tools for it, but visually does it look like it's accessible? Are the headings too light? There is, I'm going to open it. Sorry, it's over here. Accessibility. All right. This is my personal favorite, though I want to say Adobe has a really good one too. But this is a accessibility or contrast checker. It's WebAIM's contrast checker, and they have, if you click on here and click the eyedropper, it takes a second, but it's going to let me like pick a color. And so I'm going to say background's white, foreground or the text is that color, and it says it passes for normal text and large text. So we know it's great. If it had brought up an issue, or if we were doing our manual check and it said something like, oh, wrong way. Here, it's this light blue instead. Sorry, it's kind of small for you guys probably, but it's going to say fail right here. We try to hit AAA standards, but if you hit AA, you should be fine for the most part. So just make sure it's at least passing AA standards. And again, it's going to give you the color code if that's how you work, or you hopefully already had the color. You can adjust as needed, like the lightness or darkness, to make sure it passes. There's information right there for you for contrast. Did you know that the Chief Marketing Office provides brand standard colors that have been accessibility checked? The way the checker works, if there's the question mark, that means it's something you have to manually check. So you right click on it, and if you've already checked it, you can click pass so that you have this to remind you what you've done. So I know that's passed, so I've passed it. Next is logical reading order. The last 2 things about PDF actually is logical reading order and tags. These are the main things that you have to do manually. So logical reading order can be found right here, as can tags. This one's logical order, the Z, and the tag is a tag, logical. So when you click it, it's going to put a number on everything in your document. I got to give you the caveat that if you're doing a Visio or like an org chart, they are often quite hard to understand, and I don't know that I can personally help you with it, but I can certainly try. But they're very expected to take a long time trying to figure out and describe objects and figure out how it flows. It will be hard. But this one's pretty simple and straightforward. It's text in order, and honestly, it's in order naturally, so yay. But text in order, and it looks like the document is out of place. Or I'm sorry, the picture is out of place, and that is about it. These are all drag and drop. So the 20 image should be after number 10 we see. So it should be 11. I'm going to literally drag and drop. The little line shows up and drop it. And now it's 11. So now it's in order. And you would go through every page of the document, scroll through and make sure that makes sense. If you see something that doesn't make sense, you can always, sure it's not anything weird. No. You can always right click on it and change what kind of thing it is. It's a background artifact. It doesn't exist. Or it's not this, or it's not a header. It should be with this. Those are terrible examples because they didn't have any words. But you can change it as you want. You can drag and drop. The reading order panel lets you kind of select like this. If I want all of this to be a paragraph, it's selecting it. And I'm saying it's not headers, it's paragraph text. Now that's awful. Please don't ever do it. And you shouldn't experiment with this in that it's not easy to undo. It's not like a Control Z scenario. You have to then reselect. I'll go do this later. But so I changed that to paragraph, and so now it's going 1 is a big block, 2, 3, 4, 5. And why you don't want to remove headings is because that's what lets the screen reader jump through sections. Like we would visually be like, oh, I don't need that, and move to it. That's what the screen reader does. It says, we have these 7 headings. Do you want to jump to one, or do you want to read? What do you want to do? So you can go through and select however you want. I'm going to go through and do, this is heading 1. This is heading 2. It should always be a like outline structure, 1, 2, 3. Even if you don't like what heading 3 looks like, or I mean, if you don't like heading 1 looks like, you can't use heading 3 just because it's nicer or smaller. Either change your styles and settings to make it make sense, or just stick with the 1 and 2 and 3 in order. Again, because otherwise it's going to make no sense to a screen reader. They're going to have to go like 6 levels deep just to find like the primary information. So reading order, we know it's perfect. Yay, we love that for us. The last item you have to go through is tags. Tags are essentially saying what each element is for the screen reader and or other situations, computers and such. So you'll see here, it says section, and it's highlighting the whole section, and then header 1. And it tells us which one's the header 1. So we can see visually here what things are labeled as header, paragraph, header 2, paragraph. That's a list paragraph, figure, whole bunch of stuff. I will note, if you're like, why did you just say things so fast? I have a list of them in, where are we? Reading order, tag structure. Okay. Here. I have 2 slides at the end, 19 and 20, that are listing what each tag means. So if you're like, I don't know what you're saying to me, it's right here. So making sure everything's tagged correctly means that the screen reader is going to understand what it's looking at. That's very helpful. So again, I'm going to go through my tags. I'm going to click through them if I want the pink box to show up. If not, you can also expand to see what like text is underneath it. Like I can expand my list so I can see literally which bullet point it is. And so it is helpful, and size apparently, it is helpful to go through and click through and make sure everything makes sense. And I might say, oh, heading 3, that doesn't make sense, and change it. Manual checks, we've talked about this, but in general, it's, are they high contrast colors? Are the headers consistent? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is the reading order logical? Doesn't make sense. Are figure descriptions and captions helpful and clear? Like, would someone know what it's communicating or not? Are links descriptive? Again, do they not say here or this or something like that? And do the tags make sense that we just went through? And are things communicated visually, also communicated another way? I'll throw out that infographics, super hard to make accessible. Like if you're like, choice 1, choice 2, go over here. You absolutely can. Sometimes just a text version is better because it's too messy, or you can go through and make sure every piece reads in order. It depends on the situation, but be prepared if it's a very graphic heavy or very visual document that's going to take an extra amount of work. You can edit a tag by right-clicking. So if you don't want to use the like reading order guy where you highlight something, you can just literally right-click on the tag and do properties, and I can change it to heading level 2 or whatever you want to change it to and close. And so now it's a heading level 2. And so if I click on, oops, where'd it go? No, I can't get it back. There you go. If I click on it, it calls it heading level 2, which is not correct for this document, but is showing an example. So that's PDFs. These 4 slides for people who use PDFs might still be helpful. Otherwise, we're about done the PDFs part. We were zoomy quick this time, which is not a technical term. But I'm going to briefly define roles related to this. A lot of people are like, is it my responsibility? Who does what? And in general, I can say as state employees, pretty much everything we do has to be accessible. We have employees and of course our general population that we work with, all of which who have disabilities. In fact, it's like, I'm going to get the number wrong. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 4 people in Vermont who are disabled. It's about 20%, give or take. And so it's a lot of people, and a lot of times you just don't know. So it's best to always do it. In fact, the general rule of thumb is, and it's not a perfect application, but if you're sending it to more than 7 people, it's public and it should be accessible. Or if more than 7 people will view it. That is a generic number. It's just kind of like, yeah, if you're sending it to your supervisor or your team and you know they do not require accommodations or you don't use a screen reader and you're editing a draft or whatever, send it without being accessible. That's fine. But if you're sending it to your department or your division or anything that's more than just an edit draft kind of scenario, it should have these things done. I will also note that accessibility feels like a lot of work when you first get into it, but when you start where when I've designed my document already and it's already accessible, it's actually pretty quick. So it's kind of about changing practice a little bit and then doing these extra few steps, and then we can have a lot more accessibility across the agents or state, really. So there are 3 roles that have responsibilities, and the first rather is the content owners, and that's the people who literally own the words or the subject matter experts. Often they make documents, they don't always make PDFs. And so it depends on your situation which role is going to apply to you, and they might slightly overlap, and that's fine. But content owners, their job is to make the initial document as accessible as possible. So if you're in Word only, you're doing headings, you're doing alt text, you're doing descriptive links, you're making sure your headers are logical, and you're using the accessibility checker. If you have PDF and you're the one putting it in, or have Adobe Acrobat, and you're the one putting it into PDF, you also should be doing the accessibility check that we went through today. And then, of course, reviewing content for accuracy. That's just in general. And then content managers are kind of the next step up from that. They might work on pages. They might just be the person that changes it to a PDF, or maybe they're the content owner and the manager. That's fine too. They're likely the person who's in charge of posting to the internet, and their job is to make sure that the accessibility check was done. If you're told it's done, all you really need to do then is just do a quick, either the wizard to make sure it's done, or a quick accessibility check, and it will tell you if things are missing and bring this panel up to the side. And again, you can right click and pass it once you've looked through it. And then returning inaccessible documents. We want to point this out because it is absolutely an expectation that the content owner who handed someone the document should have or should be making it accessible. And it is more than in your preview. It's actually, hopefully you do, return it to the person rather than just doing all the work yourself, because we want to really build capacity. So the content owner needs to know how to make it accessible. You need to know how to check it. We all need to make sure it's posted and listed as accessible. So hopefully working together, we can really make it accessible. And then the last one for this training anyway is site administrator. Typically, that is someone who's like in charge of the department or division site. They might be building accessible pages. They might be doing the other roles, the content management and the content owner roles. If they are posting documents, they should absolutely be confirming accessibility. And again, they should be returning inaccessible documents to be made accessible before posting. With that comes, I want to note, federal documents sometimes come that are super inaccessible that we're supposed to post. In my personal opinion, and it is an opinion, both the feds should get feedback on that because they have just as much requirement as we do. But also anything that doesn't change the integrity of the document should be done still. I will note tables are never fun. I'm trying to think if I have a table document. Oh, I do actually. All right. So this lovely table would be, of course, very difficult to get done. I just want to throw out a note. If you can avoid using a table, I'm sure this is a federal document or something like that, but like if you can avoid using a table, please do. Your tags are gonna, is it tags? No. Oh, this one's not bad. Oh, because I started changing it. There'll usually be a tag per cell, and then if there's any coloring, there'll be a tag on top of that. Sorry, I messed this one up so you can't actually see it. And so it can get really messy, and so you'll just have to, again, prepare to take a lot of time to clean it up. Oh, this is interesting. Path, 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 path. Oh, the other one didn't open. There you go. There we go. Hitting the wrong button. And so this is another one that's going to be super, well, it's not had anything done, but super hard to fix. This is the example of infographics are a little rough. I just want to prepare you for that fact where you have 6 different reading order items over each other. So that is PDFs. We got through it even faster than I expected, so that's lovely. I am going to switch to Drupal. So if you're not a Drupal user, you don't have to stay. All right. So I think because of the lovely Christy, we are up on questions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into Drupal. When talking about Drupal, a lot of the same information applies in that there's a lot of stuff you have to do just manually based on design, meaning descriptive links, alternate text, using headings, all the things you've heard me say about 17 times so far. So for pages, it's mostly, did you make your text itself accessible? Woo, sorry, that was not necessary. On a page, your main job is to do just the natural accessibility things. So make sure your links make sense, they're descriptive, find information on application process deadlines and informational webinars. Well, wordy, perfect. In your link, you'll see you can choose which window it comes in. I prefer new window. Often that's the most helpful. Is up to you how you do it. And then the tool text where you hover over, I don't believe works in Drupal, at least that I have seen. But if I find out differently, I will let you know. But yeah, so you go through. And again, does it have headers? So we're going to check our headers. Are they in order? Heading 2 is the highest because the page title is heading 1. So perfect. 3, 3, 3. Perfect. Tags are also helpful. They are going to help with search engine optimization, etc. Depending on your site, of course, but so if you tag things, it'll be a little easier for folks to find things. Other than that, for the basic page accessibility, there's not too much to it as long as you followed the general digital accessibility guidelines. We do talk about images here that I didn't mention, and they should be used ideally sparingly, just because it's if it's communicating information, it's not folks who cannot see it or perceive it will not be able to consume that information. They should have alternate text and should have a description. If you watch the digital accessibility training, they talk a lot about captions versus alternate text and how captions can be really in depth and every reader gets to experience them, and alternate text should be very short and to the point and get the idea of what's being communicated. And so both are great when used in conjunction with each other and can kind of support each other. When adding images on a Drupal page, make sure it is either center or right aligned. Right aligned should be used sparingly and for smaller. Page sites and documents should have clear contact information for accessibility accommodations. And so that, for our purposes, looks like a couple different things. Sometimes there's for accommodations to contact this person. For site pages, this is the internet, obviously, but like you can do an entire page on it with a link. So at the top, it says accessibility statement. If anyone wants to know what's the deal with this site, they click on it, it goes to this page, and they can read through our commitment to accessibility. What limitations do we know we have? Like older documents, PDFs might not be accessible. It's good to have that information out there for a whole bunch of reasons. One is people know what to expect, obviously, but also they can reach out to get help if they need it. It also, not that this is the most important part, because I think it's the least important part, but will help mitigate any possible lawsuits for inaccessible material if we can actively show that we are trying to and we have a system to update them, etc. And it just displays empathy, which is obviously our goal. And then again, a way to contact. So that is what a full page accessibility site might look like. And if you are, or if you've ever perused this site, I do have a section, if I can find it. Where'd you go? Over here. On what is typically included in a full page accessibility statement so that folks can make their own if they want. I will say the intranet, or AHS intranet, all links to this particular one, which goes to the accessibility intranet site that's available for any state employee. So on Drupal, obviously those pages might look different, but the idea is to have a contact for it and have information about it. Text should be in plain language, inclusive language, and one that we always accidentally do is either no acronyms, or if the first time you use it, you got to put it in parentheses so people know what you're saying. It can be really confusing if it's like RFQL every time you go through something. I don't know why those letters, but yes. And so again, I showed you in Drupal, but make sure it opens in a new window. It's just easier. And then this one says list should have adequate space between lines. I did put in the notes. I'm not going to go over it unless someone's super excited about it, but some HTML code that you can use in Drupal. Well, you can use it anywhere. It's HTML code. That might be helpful or might not be. It's right here. It tells you how the code looks manually. So if you ever did have to go in to the source on a page, you could find it and edit it. That's always a good way to check what alternate text is available or something like that, but not everyone would have access to the HTML code, so it's just kind of a beware note. And so that coding is in your slides if you do want to mess around with it, though I wouldn't suggest literally making a mess. The next is Drupal document accessibility, and this is just make them accessible in PDF beforehand, or whichever file format they are. Ideally, the file name should not have spaces. It just makes it easier. If you'll notice, when I fail to do this, you'll see, well, this isn't a good example, but you'll see this like random letters and codes at the end of my address. If there's spaces, there'll be like % 20, blah, blah, blah in the middle of your address. And it just makes it so much easier to read if it's like a camel case kind of deal, which is the, here, I'll write it right here, which would be like, I'm gonna do help for some reason. Help, Vermont. .gov. And so it's capitalizing each word so it stands out rather than doing a space. That's what camel case is. And again, that's for file names. It just makes it slightly easier when the link is the file name. So when you have a file added, of course you want the name. Make it make sense. I think this is a VLOOKUP guide, honestly, which is Excel. And then a description. Again, the description is like your hover text. I believe it even says that now. Yeah, be used as the label to link the file. And so you want to be clear on what it is. So I'm gonna do Excel guide. Oh, you look up Excel guide. And then file format, yeah, that's fine. Then resources, I guess. And then you can add an additional description. It's not required. It doesn't really do much of anything. But once this is in, that means you've filled out all of the accessibility. Again, not a lot once you get here. For adding the file, and you can go ahead and hit save. I'm gonna just delete this later. And it's here for you. And it does, so it doesn't work for, I wonder if the new version will. And so the hover text is the exact link, which is annoying, but is what's allowed based on the template. Block accessibility is the last one, and that is probably the one with the most, very few, the most things you need to update. And so I have my block here. And I'm going to click edit, or I'm going to click the edit link, the pencil link, and edit. If you created a block, the same information is going to come out. So whichever works for you. But it needs a description. That's not really accessibility related. But right here, link text should be here, and alternative text for any image should be listed. So again, only a couple fields to fill out, but a link text can totally match the either block description or headline, whatever makes sense. But those two fields have to be filled out for it to be accessible. Very simple. Hit save, and I mean, it was already fine, but it's accessible. Yay! And so this one works. The block configuration, when you hover over it, does say Vermont Health Connect and not the ugly link. Great. A phenomenal question. So yes and no. So some of the stuff has to be done manually, of course. There is a free tool. So the idea, again, eventually we might have services, but there is a free tool, and I'm trying to find it on their site right now. I might have to link in just a second where I'm not trying to focus on two things at once. But there's a tool that you can put your link through, and it will give you a report on it. I've not used it so much that I can be like, it's super easy to use. But there are a couple different like essentially add-ons to your browser that will do that for you. They're not going to be as good as like real user experience testing, but they will look through for the technical pieces and to make sure you have headings and like you didn't just full drop the ball. So it is totally a helpful tool, and I will put it in chat as soon as I can focus enough to find it. But at this point, it's mostly, hopefully, self-checked. Hope.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. This is Hope. The other option that we have used in Dale a few times is actually, I don't know, they used to be Vic, VIC, and then they were Nick, NIC. I don't know who they are now. Maybe is it called Tyler Technologies or whoever our platform, the contractor for our platform is. They can also run a report that flags. Oh, Perfect. Yep, Tyler now. So they can run a report of a whole bunch of different things, but it also reviews items for accessibility if there are any structural things that it can pick up. I will warn you, it's sometimes depending on how elaborate your website is, it can be like a 50-page document, and it's a point in time document. So it'll pick up broken links and things of that nature. Um, but depending on if the link is an external link, sometimes the problem is with the website of that external link. And so there's nothing you can do about those instances. Uh, so we found that it's available to sort of give you an overview, but um, really what it is missing is that user experience that sort of picks up the little nuances of accessibility.
Thank you, Hope. I did put it in chat, but I did find it. It was just like 1.5 second scroll away from me. Um, so if you do go to the link spot and put your web address in here and do scan page, it's gonna get you a whole report. You have to fill in information because it emails it to you, I believe. And there is a, like I said, add-on. I want to say it's just for Chrome. So if you use Chrome, that might be helpful. That checks it for you. I do recommend the accessibility site. I mean, I do work on it myself, so I slightly biased, but we have three main categories on here: employee guidelines, AHS employees specifically. These, I mean, they apply to everybody because accessibility is a federal law, but these are just a little more outlined for AHS folks or others. But we have five main responsibilities we've identified and then have more information about each one with links under the employee guidelines. And then minimum requirements talks about each different program or set of programs. I'm sure not each, to be clear, and what might make them accessible. As well as at the top, there's a link to the Chief Marketing Office's site, who have done an amazing job of doing really clear steps for each item of accessibility, and you can get really, really in depth. And so you can go to their site and go through information, and it's linked right at the top. But so for example, if you go to web design and SharePoint's not built out super well yet, but it talks about the main items. It has some links, and if you have feedback, and none of this new slides are posted yet, but like if you have feedback or think something's missing, I am so happy to receive feedback, positive or negative. It's always helpful. And then the last one is just about accommodations. It talks about what is an accommodation, offering accommodations, and providing accommodations, as well as here, but also in providing accommodations are some commonly used accommodations. So Vancro, for example, the lovely ASL interpreters, how to request them. How do you request live captioning for events? What about assistive technology? Most of the current desk aids are for people who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind, etc. But we are working on new ones too, for such as Braille, etc. So we have a lot of different tools here, and we're trying to grow them. So again, let us know if something's missing or if we can help in some way. We would just love to make us as accessible as possible. So somebody asked about using a reader to check out accessibility. You absolutely can. There's actually one built into Microsoft. I'm going to note that screen reader users are a special kind of user because the programs are fairly complex and they know what they're doing. I, to be clear, use the narrator one to try out things myself, but it's not going to work perfectly the same unless you practice a lot, maybe. But if you just literally search narrator, that's the name of the voice app, and it's going to start reading whatever window you're in, and it will start on any any Windows computer. again, if you don't know the functionality, it might be rough, but you can practice, or I can send out information on how to use it. But it's a super helpful tool if you have no idea whether it's working or not, or if you want to get an idea of what's happening when screen reader users use it. But they have like keys to jump to headings and all sorts that I don't know.
Thanks, Heather.
Have a lovely week. We're in the middle. Have a lovely week, everyone.